Oh, do we have a show for you guys? Welcome back to The Second Legacy. My name is Braden. The guy opposite me, his name is Tim. And thank you so much for stopping by. Today, we are going to dive into the exclusive audio from the actual hearing smacking down the saga among sagas of the New Mexico tyrannical gun ban. This is going to be one you're going to want to see. And guys, we can't make this up. She's got a statement. The governor has a statement, and I can't wait to show you guys what's going on. So make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn the notification bell on. And with that, Tim, before we get into the audio, before we get into the trying to save face statements, how you doing, man? You got a new background? You look comfy? You're out of the fireplace?
Yeah, out of the fireplace today. The producer's been very, very busy here at the Copper Studios. And okay. Got new coat of paint, so it's not dark in here. It's kind of more light. And then we got some couches. So I'm kind of kicking back and kind of move the microphone a little closer.
Just in time for some freedom.
Yes.
I love that. I like your vibes. Well, you know, Tim, we've been covering this whole shenanigan for, I don't know, like what seems like forever. Because ever since last Friday, this kind of took over and sucked the air out of everything else, right?
Yes,
but we got a TRO yesterday. So this is interesting. So some backstory here, people. I'm not going to go into the whole thing that happened because you got to know what happened, right? But let's look at who the actual issued this decision. So Mr. Producer, throw up number 6. This is the judge. What you're about to hear is the audio recording from the hearing in which this guy's talking. This is Judge David Arias. Now, the funny thing about this, Tim, and this has not been publicized that much, he was a Biden appointee. Did you know that?
I did not know that. That makes this even better.
It makes it even better. 100% a Biden appointee, excuse me. So, as we get into this, remember, this was constitutional. In fact, I think, Tim, she said about constitutionality something like this.
Well, we're going to see.
That famous 3-second clip. Well,
Yep.
We're going to see. Well, you just got shown the door. You see now.
Well, we saw. In fact, in light of this loss, Tim, may I take the privilege to read to you the heartfelt statement from Governor Lujan Grisham. It's so strong and it's so good.
Yes, I just want to clarify something really quick before you read that, though. TRO stands for Temporary Restraining Order, folks. That means they basically struck down her little whatever you want to call it, tyrannical dictate. Okay,
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Thank you. This is good. We're going to touch that in a second. But here are the esteemed words of the wannabe little mini tyrant. All right, let's get this. So today, a judge temporarily blocked sections of our public health order, but recognized the significant problem of gun violence in this state, particularly involving the deaths of children. I refuse to be resigned to the status quo. As governor, I see the pain of families who have lost their loved ones to gun violence every single day, and I will never stop fighting to prevent other families from enduring these tragedies. To be clear, gun violence and drug abuse are acute threats to public health and safety in this state. We will stay the course by increasing state police presence in Bernie County, arresting the hundreds of violent offenders with outstanding warrants still on our streets, and directing our healthcare system to immediately expand capacity to accept persons experiencing drug addiction and homelessness. Over the past 4 days, I've seen more attention on resolving the crisis of gun violence than I have in the past 4 years. Now is the time to bring clarity of purpose. New Mexicans must again feel safe walking home from school, driving to the grocery store, or leaving their hometown baseball stadium. Who will stand up to protect families and children? I will. And I call on the leaders across the state, from local law enforcement to the legislature to mayors and county commissioners. Stand with me to enact solutions to save people's lives. Throwing up our hands is not an option.
Wow. Well, with this drug problem, and maybe she should just go ahead and ban drugs. I mean, that works, right?
You are, Tim. You're always on it, man.
Well,
You're coming up with great ideas.
She wants to ban inanimate objects, guns, because of the violence presumably they carry out.
It's true.
Well, I mean, let's ban drugs too, because apparently it's a public health crisis in New Mexico, and all needs to be done to fix these problems just to ban inanimate objects, and then the problem miraculously goes away. Or does it? Wow. So why do we keep doing this insanity over and over again?
I hadn't even thought about that. I got too distracted on the trying to make a stand on a hill of gun violence champion and making it all about her. I got distracted. I didn't even think about the actual solution to what she was saying. I was too busy staring at her saying, look how amazing I am. My particular favorite on this, so good, Tim. Over the past 4 days, I've seen more attention on resolving the crisis of gun violence than I have in the past 4 years. No.
That's not what they're talking about, sweetheart. They're talking about Yes, they're talking about what an idiot you are. And they're talking about,
God, no one on the planet is talking about, wow, she cares so much. We need to talk more about this gun violence specter in New Mexico. No, you don't get that. No. What everyone's been talking about is how much of a tyrant you are, how you should be probably at least considered for impeachment or removed from office because you blatantly overstepped your bounds in a bad way. But no. We have stood. Who's going to fight for the children? Who is going to fight for the children, Tim? She will. She's going to fight for them.
Yes,
she will.
That's crazy.
We don't love children. And the ultimate irony, by the way, in all of her little statements on CNN was about abortion being a comparative right. But then we're going to stand up for the children. You can't make this up, Tim.
I know the hypocrisy at all angles. I mean, they just step in it every which way they turn because what they're trying to do obviously is indefensible. And boy, what's absolute gold is what the judge has to say. I can't wait till we get to that part.
Oh, absolutely. But so now we've established who did it, who said this, the Biden-appointed judge, which does make it sweeter. We've seen the stalwart statement from the paragon of rights for children, the governor of New Mexico, who's really just trying to save face because she just got ultimately destroyed across the board. Like, I've never seen someone destroyed so hard. But now, let's go into the judge, because the judge, this is the exclusive audio from the actual hearing. Like, the written decision is not actually out yet, so this is kind of behind the curtain. So, Mr. Producer, can you throw out number 2 for me?
The arguments today and for the thorough briefing on the issue before the court. The court agrees with all the parties here today that gun violence is a significant problem in the state of New Mexico, and in particularly in Albuquerque in the city of Bernalillo, or the county of Bernalillo. In particular, the court is, as many people have been extremely affected by the deaths of children to gun violence in this state. But today the court is faced with a much more sort of narrow issue and question, and that is whether, under the express terms of the public health order issued by the governor and the Supreme Court precedent that I have to deal with today and have to follow.
Did you catch that little last part there, Tim? The Supreme Court decision and precedent that I have to follow.
Yeah, you can hear in his voice, he I think takes her side to some degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's a Biden appointee. You can hear it in his voice.
Yep.
But being a good judge that he is, he didn't throw the Supreme Court's decisions aside and do what he wanted to do anyway, because he could have, and then it just would have fallen on the next court to clean up his mess. But he actually is well-read. He understands what the Supreme Court has said regarding the Second Amendment and historically what they've said about constitutional rights in general, and he applied constitutional law, whether he agrees with it or not. And that is not an activist judge. That is just a judge. He may have a political opinion and a party affiliation, but he doesn't let that get in the way of his decision on this. And I also want to go back to something else I thought was interesting with her statement that the judge granted a judge temporarily blocked our public health order. No, sweetheart, you have 14 days left on your public health order. It was 30 days long, and he blocked the last 14 days. So, I mean, it's amazing how these people try to paint things in their favor, right? Playing word games. Like, well, he just temporarily blocked my health order. It wasn't all that serious. It was a temporary block. So yeah, your temporary health order was blocked for the duration of its temporary status. Moron.
Exactly.
It's just so funny.
That's exactly what happened. That's a good assessment, because that entire statement is 100% to save face. That's all that statement is. It's to build herself up to get the gun control bona fides, even though everyone's ignoring her. Like the Democrats and the gun controllers are like, oh.
I wouldn't say they're ignoring her. They're lambasting her. She's catching flack from her own party. I mean, she went on the Buffy show on CNN and just got eviscerated with constitutional law. Well, I read yesterday that Article 2, Section 6 says that you can't ban guns in New Mexico.
Number 7, Ms. Producer, go. Number 7.
My mic's not working.
Well, we're going to see.
The shifty eyes. Well, we'll see. While you sit in your prison cell, you tyrant. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, there are tyrannical tendencies. Now, I'm gonna provide some behind the scenes stuff. Now, this is something that only people who were listening to the actual hearing could tell you. I can tell you from the arguments that were had on both sides of this, Tim, because I was sitting there for about 2 hours listening to this. You are 100% right. Your perception on where the judge was kind of leaning personally on his own emotions, you're dead right, because he was questioning the plaintiffs in this case, which would be the gun rights supporting lawsuits. He was questioning them of, well, doesn't everyone in the state have the right to life and be protected and be safe? He was absolutely going down that road. In fact, I was talking to Jared from Guns and Gadgets when it was going down. He had the exact same read. This guy was, in the beginning, he was really angling towards, well, isn't safety a right too? And shouldn't that be considered an equal? I mean, it was absolutely that type of questioning. Now, he turned completely around because on the other side of that argument, on the state, the general counsel for the state, I can't remember her name right now, but she was there was a woman who was arguing it, Tim. Mm-hmm. And her entire argument was, it's temporary. It's not a permanent ban, so it's okay. And at the end of her argument, she started getting elevated and started getting emotionally yelling, like essentially yelling at the judge, not directly, but kind of elevating her voice. And it quickly became all about the right to the ability to have life, which is obvious. And we hit that every time, abortion. But the right of the citizens to have life. And then that's why the judge came back and said just that. So that's the backstory to this, because I was listening to it live, and it was really interesting. But she was
pro-life for a moment there.
For a moment, for a split moment. She was pro-life when it comes to guns. We're
pro-life. I mean, except for the millions of people we kill over here, but we're pro-life.
Right.
Everybody has a right to life except those people. But come on now, Judge.
I mean, yeah, exactly. Come on, we got this, right? We can be, right? Yeah, no, 100%. So for about 10 minutes, the hypocrisy was about 10 minutes where she was pro-life, and then she went right back to pro-choice in another sector, because that's what lefties do. But that's the key point. That's why I bring that up. The backstory for that first segment where he's saying it is an important thing. We all recognize that violence, not gun violence, violence is the important thing we got to fix, but you can't do this to certain people because of the Bruin decision. So that's the context, okay? Mm-hmm. So now, let's go to the next one, because all of these clips are rich. These are really good stuff, and I can't wait to show you guys how he lowers the absolute boom using the 3 horsemen of gun control apocalypse. All right, go to number 3, Mr. Producer.
Whether the plaintiffs have shown that the 4 factors for establishing a TRO have been met in this case. And after reviewing the motions before the court, the arguments made by the parties at this hearing, the public health order signed by the Secretary of New Mexico Department of Health, the Executive Order 2023-130, and the applicable law regarding restrictions on the public carrying of firearms, the court will grant the plaintiff's motion for a temporary restraining order and will temporarily enjoin the defendants from applying and enforcing Section 1 of the New Mexico Department of Health Public Health Emergency Order, issued on September 8, 2023, and Section 4 of the New Mexico Department of Health's Public Health Emergency Order, issued on September 8, 2023, to the extent that Section 4 imposes additional restrictions on the carrying of firearms that were not already in place prior to the issuance of the public health order.
Basically, yeah. Nah,
you're done.
Your TRO. This isn't going to work out. I like the way he delivered this, because he just goes, yeah, we're just going to get straight to it. Yeah, you get a TRO. You get a TRO on this section. You get a TRO on that section. It goes back to the way it was before you did this and before this entire firestorm started. And then the next clip is where he lowers the boom. But understand, we're doing this in the order of how he actually spoke it. We've just broken it up in a few ways. So he goes out and he basically disarms the concern around the gun violence apparatus, right? The whole gun violence problem that they're pushing, the lives, the issues, the children, all the things. He addresses the emotion, but then he goes directly after the hard brass tacks of Bruin decision and the judge and the Constitution and all the pieces, and then he grants the TRO. So that's where we've been, right? So we've been on the emotional addressment, we've been to the Bruin introduction, and now we've been to the TRO. This next one is where every single court in the nation should go into this. Before we get into it, anything you want to add to that, Tim, before we hit the third one?
No, let's go ahead and hit that one, because it gets even better.
All right, number 4.
The court finds the plaintiffs have met their burden of showing a substantial likelihood of success on the merits, given the Supreme Court's holdings in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association Incorporated versus Bruin, District of Columbia versus Heller, and McDonald versus Chicago. In particular, the court finds that Bruin's holding confirming that individuals have a right to carry a handgun for self-defense outside the home supports the contention that plaintiffs have met this factor for justifying a temporary restraining order at this stage of the litigation. The court further finds that if an injunction is not issued, plaintiffs have shown they will suffer irreparable harm. Again, the Supreme Court in cases like New York Times Company versus the United States and Elrod versus Burns has made clear that the violation of a constitutional right, even for minimal periods of time, unquestionably constitutes irreparable injury.
Boom.
You know, it's his tone, his voice inflection is such that it sounds like 90s grunge. He's like
Nirvana?
It's like, and, you know, basically because of Bruin, you know, you can't just suspend people's constitutional rights. It does irreparable harm. So we're going to go ahead and grant the TRO. All right, everybody go home. Yeah, I say, you can tell, again, and I didn't see the entire proceeding like you did, and I could just tell from his inflection from the first couple of clips that he definitely has an issue with gun ownership, but he is following the constitutional law
rules
and the precedent set by the Supreme Court. So it's really interesting. And he's absolutely correct. You cannot just go around willy-nilly suspending people's rights just to see how it'll play out in court, as she said. That was the most moronic thing I've ever heard. And as he said, quite clearly, you know, it does cause irreparable harm. If somebody is denied the right to self-defense, and within that 30-day window, they get mugged and they lose their life or a loved one or somebody else around them, that's irreparable harm. They were trying to follow the illegal dictate of this governor and be compliant with the law because they're a law-abiding person, and then they wind up paying the ultimate price. So yes, when you deny people their constitutional rights, it can cause irreparable harm. And so he's absolutely right on this.
Yeah, and the like you said in the introduction, the TROs don't just come down willy-nilly. I mean, understand some backstory here. We've been in a land of TROs for everything because the gun controllers have been so extreme recently, and they're getting TROs left and right. But in a normal judicial environment, TROs don't happen that frequently.
Pretty rare. Yeah, you really have to make a case for one. Yes.
You have to make a case for one. You have to have irreparable injury, and you have to have high success on the merits, or a high likelihood of success on the merits. We've had so many TROs in the past 3 to 5 months. Understand that kind of implies how far these people are going. Mm-hmm. But one thing, Tim, that I loved about this segment, because this one, every judge in the country should hear this one, and we should hear a lot more about this, because he really did 3 things in that clip, and this is the meat of it. The first one, you nailed it, irreparable harm. That's a big deal. The other things that he did 2 things on the bookends here, the front end. He laid out what I call the 3 horsemen of the gun control apocalypse: McDonald, Heller, and the Bruin decision. They all work together and stack on each other to undermine exactly what these people are trying to do. That's why they hate them all so much. The Heller decision, that only came about because they were trying to ban gun ownership in homes. Well, that door just got shut. Well, we're going to ban you from carrying in public. Nope, Bruin decision. All of these things are stacking, and that's incredibly important because when you look at those 3 things, there's no wiggle room for what they're trying to do. And that was the first piece. The second piece, Tim, and this is the part that I had not heard before, and I love this part, he came in and basically quoted or cited 2 other decisions that said, even if you infringe on a limited time scale or a time frame, you're still infringing.
Right.
You still can't do it. And it sounds very similar to what phrase in the gun world? What's it sound? What's it sound like? A right delayed is a right denied.
Oh, yeah, right. I was thinking of something else. Glad I didn't say it.
Something else. I'm glad you didn't say it. If you hesitated, I'm glad you didn't say it because that was a good segment. I'd hate to have to edit it.
Beep. Reminds me of South Park episode. You know which one I'm talking about.
Yep. We're just gonna leave. We're gonna leave that one there. Anyway, but yeah, like legit, dude. You're talking about something that he just affirmed something we've said forever. A right delayed is a right denied, and he cited a Supreme Court decision around it. And he laid out the 3 horsemen of the gun control apocalypse against them. Any questions?
Nope. I'd say that's a pretty effective smackdown from all angles.
Good Lord.
And then you read her statement after this and contrast the 2.
Right.
It's like,
which is why
woman,
we read
you're
it
not
first.
even in reality here. You're wow.
Yes, exactly.
You're Fetterman nuts. It's like,
oh man, that dude, he's gone.
Yeah.
But that's why we did that in that order. Because if you read her statement, you would think that it was like this mealy, like, oh, we just missed it. Oh man,
Yeah.
we're
It
in
was
the right
really
page.
close.
We're all going the same direction. We were going to see. It was going to be great. And then you listen to the actual court decision, and it's like, this wasn't even. He nuked you from orbit.
well, the judge admitted that we have a gun violence problem and a drug problem, and he just gave us a temporary, and just one piece of our public health order. He temporarily suspended that one piece. Basically just wiped out your entire argument, and you're done. The only part of that public health order that anybody cared about was your infringement on their constitutional rights, and that just got stripped away temporarily, the exact same duration that your order lasts. Dolt. It's like, you're done. You go home.
Exactly. But Tim, after all, this is only to bring clarity of purpose. And, it's really about the children. And who's going to stand up for them? She will. She will.
When she doesn't, support the wholesale slaughter of, she'll stand up for the other ones. Yes.
It's so bad. This is like, I don't think that this could have been a worst case scenario. I can't imagine a worse outcome for gun controllers, for her, or for the entire gun control apparatus. I don't think you could have had a worse outcome. Honestly, no. I can't think of a worse way this would fail for them.
I mean, CNN was pretty bad, but the court was like the cherry on top. It's like she took a beating on CNN, and then the judge just steps in and is like, oh, we're not done yet, sweetheart.
Yeah. No. In fact, speaking of that same judge, by the way, I have this image in my head, Mr. Producer. Let's see if we can get an image mix between this judge and Kurt Cobain. So I really hope you can pull it off. That'd be amazing. All right, so let's wrap this up, though. Let's hear all the details that the judge came out, because this is where he actually puts in the time frame to support what Tim's saying around the actual timing. All right, number 5.
Balances of harms and whether an injunction would be adverse to the public interest. The court finds these factors also favor the issuance of a temporary restraining order, as courts have similarly found that it is always in the public interest to prevent the violation of a party's constitutional rights, and the balance of equities favors those whose constitutional rights are threatened. The court will issue a written order on the TRO, probably this afternoon or tomorrow, but it is effective as of 2:55 p.m. on September 13th, 2023, today's date, and will be in effect for the next 14 days.
So the reason that I played that part, and I really wanted to wrap it up with that one, Tim, is because he said something that was a perfect summation for what we were continuously looking on. You cannot do this to the constitutional rights of a party. He made it about the right issue. He didn't make it about something made up about lives. He didn't make it something made up about crime, about children, about whatever other distraction of emotional origin they brought up. He made it directly about the constitutional issue at hand, and you cannot infringe upon the constitutional rights under the balance of equities. This is a really good verbal decision. Now, I haven't seen the written one. That's why we're doing the audio. But that's what, I mean, like, this is almost, I don't think it could get better, to be honest.
No, I mean, it's kind of crazy that I'm sitting here applauding a Biden appointee to the bench. It's because I don't expect this from them. Typically, if you secure a nomination from a president, you're pretty entrenched in their politics, right?
Absolutely.
You would think. I mean, it stands to reason. And so clearly this guy, as we've already said, I would think that he politically sides with the state of New Mexico. But boy, I mean, I got to applaud him for setting aside political differences and focusing strictly on the Constitution and the law, and handing down that TRO as he should have. I mean, kudos to him. What a great thing to do. That's right.
I completely agree. I mean, like, and again, what I'm about to say is not because he did something that I agree with. That has nothing to do with what I'm about to say. He followed the constitutional confines of his position. He did what he was supposed to do. That, even if it was going against us, but that's kind of the beauty of our position. We're supported by the Constitution. We're not trying to just make it up whole cloth. But he did what he was supposed to do. He held intact the constitutional confines of an executive bureaucratic power grab that was egregious. He did fantastically well, exceedingly well. And the ramifications of this, we said from the very beginning, Tim, you and I kind of wrapping this idea, we said from the very beginning of this entire saga that this was bigger than just New Mexico, that we noticed some things around Democrats coming out against it, and some other Democrats were really silent. Every single Democrat in the nation in the seat of power, governors, legislators, they all just saw what just happened. Mm-hmm. They saw the backlash. That's incredibly important. They saw the emotion. They saw the reaction from the population. They saw the reaction from the media, and then they saw the final culmination of the TRO. That you can't pay for that kind of exposure.
No, that I think all those things combined will definitely cause them pause. It reminds me going back to the original Clinton era crime bill, what's commonly referred to as assault weapons ban. Same thing happened there. You know, he really thought he was going to accomplish something great, and he pushed that through, got it passed with the sunset. That's how it made it in to law, was they had to put that sunset clause in there, and then they got the votes they needed. But immediately thereafter, and he's even gone on record and said one of the biggest mistakes of his presidency was passing that bill, because the backlash, I'll remember it to this very day. We didn't have social media like we have today back then, but people everywhere were talking about it, and it cost them the next election. They lost the House, and they had held on to that House for decades, and they lost it. And that's what she's doing now to the Democrat Party. They're going into a very contested election year, and here this dingbat stands up and says, "Hold my beer," and proceeds to pretty much drag the entire Democrat Party down for their nonsense. I mean, this is what they would normally do, but she just had poor timing. Right? Because if she'd done this any other time, they would have been like, "Oh yeah, you go, girl." But now it's like, "Oh, you can't be doing this in an election year because you're going to cost us this election. We're 2 points behind Trump. We can't be doing this." It's just, good Lord, so predictable. Yeah. But yes, I think I snorted there too.
There was a little snort. I wasn't going to call it out, but
I had to.
But there was a moment.
Because I always give my wife flack when she does that. Like, I think you just snorted, and now she has this. Snorted.
See, and now it's on the internet for all to see.
Mr. Producer, remove the snort.
Oh, man, this is the part where we go off the rails. Wrap us up. Take us out.
Well, on that note, we're going to wind things up. What a crazy story. And as this develops, we'll continue to bring you more information. Thank you for watching The Second Legacy, and we'll talk to you guys soon.